Hi, I'm Vaish, and today we're going to talk about how alcohol affects the brain at the cellular level. First, let's discuss the brain. The brain is made up of tons of nerve cells, called neurons. A single neuron has many parts it uses to send and receive electrical signals, including the dendrites, the axon, and the axon terminal. However, for a signal to be transmitted, the stimulus must be strong enough to surpass a certain threshold. This is called the threshold stimulus. If the stimulus doesn't reach this threshold, the signal or action potential will not go through. Once this threshold is reached, the neuron will carry out the action potential. Now, this signal doesn't always cause a neuron to fire. Whether the neuron fires or not depends on the type of signal it receives from chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters can either be excitatory, meaning they cause the receiving neuron to fire, or they can be inhibitory, meaning they cause the receiving neuron to not fire. When an electrical impulse passes all the way through a neuron and finally reaches the axon terminal, the vesicles, which are filled with neurotransmitters, bind to the membrane and release the neurotransmitters across the synaptic cleft. From there, the neurotransmitters bind to receptors on the dendrites or the receiving neuron or the postsynaptic neuron. If the neurotransmitter is excitatory, the signal will pass on in the next neuron. If not, the signal will reach a dead end. The neurotransmitters alcohol mainly affects are GABA, glutamate, dopamine, and serotonin. As an inhibitory neurotransmitter, GABA works to calm neural activity. After alcohol enters the bloodstream and crosses through the blood-brain barrier, it magnifies the effect of GABA by binding to GABA receptors. In addition, alcohol suppresses the effects of glutamate, an excitatory neurotransmitter, by decreasing glutamate's ability to bind to NMDA receptors in the brain. By amplifying the effect of inhibitory neurotransmitters and suppressing the effect of excitatory neurotransmitters, alcohol ultimately depresses neural activity. This is why when a person is drunk, they feel a psychological slowdown, causing the stumbling around, slurred speech, and decreased motor performance. Alcohol also increases levels of dopamine and serotonin in the brain. Dopamine is associated with feelings of pleasure, and serotonin is a mood enhancer. This is why people who drink often feel happier. However, like any substance in the body, once the brain thinks it has enough serotonin, it stops producing it. This is why in the long run, people who drink alcohol often become dependent on it to make them feel happy. Eventually, chronic alcoholics end up with lower overall levels of serotonin in their brains. When they suddenly stop drinking, they may experience withdrawal, a state of depression with very dangerous symptoms. In addition, people who consume alcohol regularly to unwind and de-stress actually may end up immune to the de-stressing effects of alcohol. Their brains get so used to the relaxing effect of alcohol that they respond by producing more excitatory neurotransmitters to allow the drinkers to function on a day-to-day basis. Because of the high level of excitatory neurotransmitters in the brain, alcohol becomes less effective. Ultimately, alcoholics may develop a tolerance to the effects of alcohol, making stress and anxiety even harder to cope with. Today, many researchers are working to find a way to reduce alcohol withdrawal in animals. Some scientists have isolated particular genes and peptides, for example the SLO1 gene in the worm C. elegans, which directly affect the withdrawal symptoms. In the future, perhaps we may develop a way to modulate gene expression to selectively alter electrical activity in specific neurons to better withdrawal behavior. But for now, it's best to acknowledge alcohol's short-term and long-term effects on the brain to understand the dangers of excessive drinking. Thanks for watching!